Have you ever been like Abraham in the sense that he had a calling from God? A calling that propelled him to pack up all of his belongings, move with his family into a land that he had never, ever been. I don't know about you, but if you're anything like me, you have a calling to start a project, and frankly, usually it gets about halfway done, and your excitement and enthusiasm for the project stall out just as you are encountering troubling things, challenging things, things that frankly you just didn't expect. And yet here we see Abram, who gets this idea into his brain. And he is going to go on a trip. He's going to go with his father and his cousin or nephew, Lot, and Sarai, his wife. And they go up into Haran, and up there, Terach, his father, dies. Challenge point number 1. He doesn't return. He keeps on going. He gets into Canaan only to face more problems. There are people in the land he thought he would be living in. And they're not like what he thought they would be like. He doesn't feel welcome. And then the land that he thought he would feel welcome in turns out to have a problem. There is a famine. Now, I'll remind you that famines, even today, your avocados may go up significantly in price if there's a famine somewhere in the world, but at the end of the day, ultimately, Publix will still provide you with an avocado. That's not so much the case then. Famines meant that there would be disease and death because there would be malnutrition. And if there was a significant famine, you had to leave. And he did. He ended up going to Egypt. But he never lost the calling. He had tremendous faith. He had tremendous obedience to that calling. Even though he failed, he still progressed forward. Though whether or not he failed or not is questionable, the circumstances were a challenge. He progressed forward. So what did he do? He did what everybody does. They establish an altar to God. No, not most people don't do that. But he did have a conversation with God, and God reassured him that he would be a blessing, that he would have progeny, that there would be fertility, not just in terms of children, but in terms of the land itself, that it would provide for him. He found prayer. Interesting, when we look in the Hebrew Bible, and we see a collection of psalms that are oriented just for people who are engaging and going on pilgrimage. These were people who would ascend up into Jerusalem. And I'll remind you, Jerusalem is on hills. They would go up the stairs, and as they were going up the stairs, they would say these psalms, these shirim of ascent. And how they're classified, how they're organized, in the Hebrew Bible is actually interesting. Walter Brueggemann, who is a biblical scholar, noticed that they were organized in this position. Orientation. You are oriented to go onto this pilgrimage. Avram felt a calling and was oriented to get rolling into the land where he knew his future would be bright. Then suddenly, disorientation. Things are not quite working out the way he intended. And finally, reorientation. He resumes his focus back on to what it is that he was attempting to at the get-go. He decides that he is in fact going to resume living in the land of Israel and resume building a life there. This, of course, creates the powerful background for the entire establishment of us as a nation. And so when we think about these songs, which are psalms of ascent, I'll remind us that they were there and designed simply to encourage us during those moments of deep challenge. Because we have all been just like Avram. We have all felt like those pilgrims heading into Jerusalem on one of those pilgrimage festivals when we set out to have the wonderful experience at the temple. Only as we are on our journey, we realize the hills of Jerusalem are rocky and steep and dangerous. And we need that encouragement. We need that stick-to-itness. We need that tenacity. For me, I'll state, it comes in my prayer, in my worship, in the things that I do as a rabbi, that I'm able to maintain a level of faith that propels me even when I have doubt about what it is that I'm doing in my life. And I ask all of you, what propels you when you find that you are engaged in a project, called to do, only to realize that there is a challenge thrown up at you that you not only didn't expect, doubt that you even have the capacity to manage. And remind us that it is the ability to have that faith, to be open to God, and in fact to reorient ourselves to see that challenge not as something that will prevent us from arriving to the final destination of our pilgrimage, but that reorientation is exactly what we need to do in order to overcome the obstacle in front of us. We need to see it for what it is, an opportunity, not something that will prevent us from reaching our goal. This year, as I looked at Parshat Lech Lecha, I thought about all of the challenges that we face in journeys. And I also thought equally about how it is that we will overcome them through faith, commitment, and ultimately support in one another. Can you hear what so? And may this be God's will.